Hello. It's one of my favorite days. It's the day we learn how to do French knots. This is a scrap paper, scrap piece of fabric. I gotta cut these edges off. So today we learn about French knots and colonial knots. If you don't like French knots, colonial knots will do the trick. All right, so French knots are kind of a staple. They're very good to learn, no matter where you're at in your stitching journey. Beginner to advanced, they're great. So what we're gonna do is we'll do French knots up here and colonial down here. So French knots, you can make them bigger or smaller depending on how many threads you use and how many times you wrap it. So we're just gonna make a little grid. So we're gonna do 3 strands and 6 strands, and we're gonna wrap it once, twice, 3 times, which will make more sense once I get stitching, but that's what we're gonna do. And then colonial knots, we'll do down here. We'll do 3 and 6 here as well. Okay. Let me get us some thread. Let's see how many strands are here. Now I have a knot of thread. Okay, I think this is 3. Yep. Okay, so we're gonna do brown French knots. Now, if you have a hoop stand, French knots are easier in a hoop stand because you're gonna use both hands, but it's not impossible to do. I'm gonna do them without a hoop stand so you can see how I do that. Okay, so with French knots, let's just go ahead and start. So we have a knot on the end of our thread, pull it through the front. So what we're gonna do is wrap this one time. So your non-stitching hand, whether it's left or right, so right hand you'd pull it this way, left, it doesn't matter what way you pull it. But what you're gonna do is just wrap this around your thread one single time, and then we're gonna go back down. We're not gonna go back down in the same hole though, okay? We wanna go down right next to it, okay? If we go down in the same hole, you're more likely to pull your knot through the hole, but you can see like, it's just a tiny gap. Okay, so wrap it around once. I put my needle in and then I move my knot down to the end of the fabric and then hold on to it. This is when I pick up my hoop. So we wrap it one time while it's sitting on the table, put your needle down, move your knot to the bottom, keep your tension, pick your hoop back up, and then push your needle through, keeping that tension the whole time. And then when you get to about there, you can let it go. Okay? We'll do a few of these, don't worry. So we're gonna wrap it one time, put our needle down, knot to the end, pick up our hoop, keep your tension. We've got a knot. So 2 is working the same way. 1, 2. Down next to it, move your knot to the bottom, keep your tension. Now, if you're pulling this too tight, you're not gonna be able to get your needle through. A couple of things. If you're using a needle that's pretty straight, this is a size 5 needle. So the eye of the needle is about the same as the shaft of the needle. It's just slightly bigger. But if you have a needle, I don't have one over here, where the eye is wider than the needle, it's a little bit harder to do French knots with. So if you have just a straighter needle, you're gonna have an easier time. Okay, 1, 2, pull our knot to the bottom. And you can kind of see the size difference. I mean, let me do the 3 and then I'll kind of give you a better close up. 1, 2, 3. Knot to the bottom. And then pull it through. Terry says, great tip. That's why we love you, Heather. Thank you. I have a lot of things to say. 1, 2, 3. Now, I don't usually wrap more than 3 times. You definitely can, but I feel like once I start wrapping more than 3 times, I get a knot that's just, it doesn't lay flat. It looks funky. Like it's just not very good. So you can kind of see the size difference. Wrapped once, wrapped twice, wrapped 3 times. You can see how this one pokes up not quite as much, and then those 3s, how far they like lift up off the fabric. So refocus, here we go. All right, so there is 1, 2, 3. Now let's double our thread and do a 6. 6-stranded. Here's my other tip with French knots. If you are going to do a 6-stranded French knot, I would double your thread over. If you have 6 strands on your needle, then you're trying to pull 12 threads through your fabric, through your knot. So if you have 6 in here, then you've got 6 strands here and 6 strands here. So you've got 6 here and 6 here. So then with the eye of your needle, your eye is trying to pull 12 strands through that knot. It's gonna be a lot harder. So if you're struggling with bigger French knots with more threads, try doubling your thread. If you want 4 strands, do 2 and double it over. If you want to do 6, then do 3 and double it over. That's my best tip when you're trying to do more threads. Okay, so same thing as the 3, except now we're just using 6 strands. So it'll just make bigger French knots. I should get 6 strands in my needle and show you how much harder it is to pull through. I will at the end. Okay, 1, 2. And also, if you do this and then you go to put your knot down and it doesn't look how you want it to, like let's say you didn't keep your tension and you get to here and it's like not tight enough, or you have like a loose thread. Let's say like one of these pulled funny and you've got like this messy knot and it's not how you want it, pull your needle out. You can redo that. Once your needle goes through the fabric, knots they're nearly impossible to get undone. So it's a good time once you get your thread down to the bottom to kind of look and make sure that's how you want your knot to look. And if it doesn't, then pull your needle back out and try again. Okay, so if you kind of look, this is about the size of this. This is about the size of this. 1, 2, 3. Whoops. I like to use 6 strands when I'm doing, or 12 sometimes, when I'm doing like knots, or when I'm doing knots for like bushes and trees. It's so fun. Okay, let's see if we can get this to focus close. Oh, there we go. Okay, so you can kind of see the sizes are similar, and then these are quite a bit bigger. So let's turn it on its side. You can see how much they like stick up. When I'm doing, you can also do, like when I'm doing trees and bushes, I'd like to do kind of a looser French knot. So I'd keep this, I mean, I keep the tension, but I kind of keep it looser on my needle. So you can kind of see Like I don't have it pulled very tight. So then when I pull this through, I have like a fluffier French knot versus this is pulled tight and this is pulled loose. I like these because it gives like a really nice texture for bushes and trees. If you have a knot that you have pulled through and it's kind of messy, hold on, I'll show you what I mean. Let's see if I can accidentally or purposely create one. Okay, so like this, and it's like sticking up and it's kind of just like all over the place and like flopping around. If you come up like on the edge of your knot, then you can go down into the middle and like tack that down a little. Don't pull it too tight because it'll like ruin the shape, but if you keep this kind of loose, then it is not like flopping all over the place. You could even do another one, sorry, another one from over here and put it down into the middle again. It'll change the look of it, but then you, like if you've got a knot that's just like the biggest mess and you can't take it out, this helps a lot to kind of get it more secure. I mean, it changes the look, obviously, but then you don't have some crazy knot that's all over the place. Okay? Let me just show you, let me get some more thread in my needle and just show you the difference in pulling that thread through if you have more strands in your needle. Hold on. Okay, so this is 6 strands. So now I've got 6 here and 6 here. So when I pull that knot through, I'll have 12 strands. That's what I was saying, if that didn't make sense before. But did you hear the difference? Like when it snaps through that fabric? Even I struggle to like pull it through. But that like pop, it's because of all that thread I'm trying to pull through. I mean, they look the same-ish, but it's just, it's harder to pull through. It's harder on your fingers. I have to pull way harder to get that through. So if you struggle with French knots, try that. Okay, should we talk about colonial knots? I can't do it with 6 strands. I don't like to anymore. Okay. All right, let me tie these together. Oops, wrong one. Okay. Now, colonial knots will look very, very similar. I think that they're a little bit more uniformed, like where French knots, like I did the same thing, but these two look slightly different. This one's a little bit smaller. That one's a tiny bit bigger. That one's a little bit smaller. I feel like I can get a more consistent knot with colonial knots. So if I'm doing like polka dots, so I want them all the same, I have an easier time doing that with colonial knots versus French knots. So if that's important to you, try that. But if you can't do French knots or don't want to learn to do French knots, colonial knots are a really good option. You wrap it the same. You don't have like these different sizes from wrapping at different times. So you can make bigger or smaller knots depending on how many strands you're using. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a backwards C like this. We're going to take our needle and go up like this inside the C. We're going to wrap this around the top so we have like a figure 8 or an infinity symbol, whatever you want to call that. And then we're going to pull it snug. We're going to get our needle down in our thread, pull our knot to the bottom, and then pull that through. So it's similar in size to these two, 3 2 times or 6 1 time. Let me show you again. I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit more. Okay, so we've got our backwards C, and then we're gonna come up. We're gonna wrap it around, make that infinity sign, go in, pull that knot to the bottom, keep our tension just like we do with French knots, and then pull it through. So super, super similar. They're slightly different, but it creates a similar effect. So let me do it with 3 strands. So we're gonna grab that, come around the top, bring that knot to the bottom, and then pull it through. Okay. So some people find these easier. If you really, really struggle with French knots, I would encourage you to try colonial knots because they might be easier for you. If you have a hoop stand, it's always great because then you can use your 2 hands without having to like pick up your hoop and put down your hoop and pick up your hoop. And anyway, so if you can use a hoop stand, great. If not, I put this down on a table or a desk or my lap or whatever when I'm stitching, and I need a second hand. So that works too. All right, let's move back to our friend Autumn. And hold on, I gotta get these little thread scraps out of my way. I did not work on my cornucopia anymore. That's okay. We will move on to this section and then we'll add some French knots around here. Oh, thank you. She says, I love the way you teach. I appreciate that. I like teaching, and I feel like when I was learning, people weren't teaching the way that I learn. And so I kind of had to like do my own thing. Okay. I can't remember what color these are. Pulling up my pattern. Slow. Oh, I have them as green. I was thinking they were brown. Now, if you want to fill in just some brown satin stitch right here, you can, just to bring that cornucopia down a little bit. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna do this, and then I'm just gonna fill this in with greenery, which I'll show you after we do our French knots and our centers and stuff. But let's do this, and then we can talk about filling in the other sections. It's already 10:20. This is gonna be a longer video. I'm sorry, guys. Okay. So I'm gonna use, well, do I want 2 or 3 strands? I guess I want 3. The cattails came out really good. Oh, you guys, they are so fun. I've only seen one other person's, Giselle, Allison the Bear. I shared hers on my stories last night. She did, so I did 6 strands. She did 12 strands. They look incredible. So if you haven't been to my stories yet, maybe I should save her story save that story into the highlight because they look so cool. I think I'll save it, but she said that they were really, really, really horrible to stitch, but they look really cool. I think I'll save them to the highlight. So if you're watching this later, you can see them too. But for those that are live right now, highly recommend checking hers out because they are super cool. Okay. I was wondering what the difference was. Yeah, it's because she used more strands. So they're like thick. Maybe I'll have her send me a photo of them close up so I can share them because they really are so incredible. All right. Now, you could easily do, well, I'll show you 2 ways. So God, what's the stitch called? Fly stitch and a fern stitch. Fly stitch. We're going to do a fly stitch first. So this is just like if you have branches like this that are like V's, we'll do that. So for this stitch, fly stitch, you come up on one end of the V, you go down on the other side of the V, and then you come up at the point and keep that loop open. So we've got, whoops, I've got too much thread going on here. So we've got our open loop, we're coming up inside like we do with detached chain stitches. And now I've got a knot, hold on. Okay, so came up here, went down here, came up here, and then we're gonna pull that tight. Now, the tighter that you pull this, the more of a V shape you'll get. If you don't pull it as tight, you'll have more of a U shape, which is fine if that's what you're going for. But tension matters with this stitch depending on what you want it to look like. So we came up in the middle and then we're gonna go down at the bottom of the next V. So we're gonna come up on one side. It doesn't matter, you can come up on left or right, it doesn't matter. Come up on one side, go down on the other side, keep your loop open, and then come up at that point, pull it snug, and then go back down. Now, this side doesn't have a branch, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do a straight stitch in here, and then just this little branch here to connect it. This one, you just always have to start at the top. So I'm gonna come back up to the top here, and go down here, up in the middle, and pull, whoops, pull that snug, and then go down. Okay. Now you could always just do your stitches just one at a time. You don't have to do like I just did. So you can just come and do all of these like single stitches. It's not really a back stitch. So a fern stitch is like this, like you're just doing one at a time like this, but there's a specific order and I don't remember what it is. It's like left, right, center, left, right, center. You're supposed to do it like a specific order for it to be a fern stitch, but I don't remember which way specifically. But this one is totally easy to just go and do all your random little straight stitches. And you can start at the bottom if you want. I feel like I'm at such a weird angle. Just make sure you're using the same holes. Look, that one is not in the same hole. There's like a little bit of fabric between them. It's weird. Cover that up. Okay. Yeah, so this also, you can see a bit of a difference because you're not going, you don't have like 4 strands going in right here like you do right here. So it'll change the look just slightly, but most people would never notice this difference unless they're like really, really staring at it. So this is not a big deal. Whatever way you decide you want to do it. I like to do a fly stitch just because I feel like it's just a tiny bit faster and I like the movement of it, but whatever you want to do, they both work just fine. Okay, we're gonna do our little French knots. So you kind of have to, if you've never done French knots before, this might be fun for you to do. Just get a scrap paper and make yourself a little grid. Because then you can be like, well, what size do I want these French knots? Like, do I want them this big? Do I want them this big? Do I want them like really big? So you kind of have to decide. I'm going to do 3 strands wrapped twice. Couldn't think of that word. And see if I like that. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now. And we'll see how that looks. But if not, I can single wrap it or triple wrap it, but I think that's the size I want. Just getting some thread. Also, French knots. If you have a really, really, really long piece of thread, you're more likely to get knots and have it, you'll have your thread knot versus getting a French knot. So even I will work with shorter pieces of thread when I'm doing French knots, because if you get a knot when you're doing a French knot, it's like the most annoying thing. So that's another thing. If you're struggling with French knots and you keep like getting knots in your thread, even just like those little like slip knots, it's very annoying when you're doing French knots. I'm just putting a knot at the end of my thread. Hold on. I have said knot about 1,000 times. It's losing its meaning. All right, I'm just gonna do a red berry at the end of each of these. So I'm gonna come up next to where I want to go down. I want it to go down at the stem. So I'm gonna go down here. So I came up just right next to it. So I'm gonna wrap 1, 2, and see how it looks. So kind of do a knot. You can kind of test it out and see like, is that gonna be too big? Do I want it smaller? Do I want it bigger? You can kind of test it out that way. I think I like that size. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull that through. Yeah, I like that. So that's what we're gonna do. Lots of little French knots. You could do these as colonial knots as well. Same thing as we were doing before. Like they really, once they're like side by side, they really don't look that different, especially if you're gonna do a whole bunch of them. I need to put 2 in this little spot. Anyways, French knots, man. They don't take very long. I'm just gonna finish them because it won't take me very long. I like this pop of red though. Like a pop of a brighter red versus like a darker red, which I know like darker red is usually more of a fall color, but I really like a pop of bright red. It makes me think of, what are those bushes? Like the burning, what are they called? They turn like bright red, but they're green in the spring and summer, and then they like turn like that fiery red. Oh, they're my favorite. Okay, when you're working on French knots, your thread will start to get twisted and look like this. Let it untangle. So I usually will take it and just like let my needle fall and just like untwist it. That's another way you'll start to get like knots in your thread when you're trying to do French knots, is if it starts to like twist up on itself. So if you notice that it's like curling all over, give your thread a second to just untwist. Two more. On this flower, I'm going to do like big, fluffier French knots so you can kind of see what that looks like if you were to put some like kind of sloppier French knots. Okay. So cute. All right, let me tie this off. And then we'll get out our browns. Oh, another fun thing you can do with French knots is use multiple colors, and it creates a really fun effect. So I'm gonna do that for these French knots. I'm gonna mix the 2 lighter browns because why not? All right, I feel like this angle is so weird. So we've got 422 and 3862. So I'm going to do 2 of each just so that they're even. So I'll have 4 stranded French knots. All right, let's see here. I can cut this brown thread to the same length. So I just measure them next to each other. There's this cute old lady that lives in my neighborhood. I think she's like 95. She's super old and she walks from one end of the block to the other every day. I see her out there, unless it's like raining. She is out there walking. She just walked past. I'm excited. This will be my first completed project. Yay! I'm excited for you. First project is always like, I feel like it's such a rush to be like, I did this. And like, when you look at embroidery and you see it, a completed embroidery, it's almost like I could never do that because there's so much going on if you look at it as a whole. But really, when you break it down like this and do one thing at a time, you can do it. You just have to break it down. You can't look at the whole picture right away. Okay, so I've got 4 strands in here. Normally when I'm doing big French knots, I probably should have done 3 of each color, but When I'm doing like big giant French knots and I'm filling a space, I like to start on the inside and then put my needle down on the other side, like closer to the other threads. So I'm gonna wrap this 3 times. I'm not gonna pull it very tight, and then I'm gonna go down right here. So I could pull this tighter or I can keep it loose. So you see how like big and fluffy that's gonna be? But I really like it when I'm filling spaces. Oh, maybe that was too big. See, I don't like that. Now it's like overlapping. It's okay. We can fix that. I'm gonna come up here. I'm gonna pull that knot into the center and then go down on top. This was too fluffy. This was not good. Oh my gosh, I want to start over. I don't think I like this light brown either. If you need to pull out French knots, they all come out at the same time. You can't just do one. I don't like this. See, because now you have like this big knot. Nope. This was a nope. As soon as I did it, I was like, nope, that's not it. Maybe mix the light brown with the dark brown instead of the tan. I'll try that. Sorry. It was too contrasting. Didn't like it. All right, there's our light brown again. Let's get some of our dark brown. Experimenting is good. Okay, that will be better. Don't be afraid to be like, nope, that was a bad choice. Stop it right now. Don't go any further. It does not look good. Okay. Honestly, Heather, it is helpful to the rest of us to hear your thought process while you're stitching. That's part of the reason why I don't stitch these before I do a stitch along, because of that reason, because I want people to see the thought process. And when you're on your own stitching, I want you to be able to do that problem solving. Like, you've got to be able to do it. There's not going to be somebody holding your hand all the time. So anyways, that's a big reason why I do it. So I'm glad somebody noticed. Okay, let's try this again. 1, 2, 3. It doesn't need to be quite as loose as it was. Pull it just a little tighter. Okay, that's better. So I usually work in a circle, depending on how big the space is. I'll usually work in a circle and then fill it in after, depending on what's going on. But filling in a center is a great time to practice French knots, because it's okay if they're messy. They're not like on their own like these ones are. They're like all smashed up together, and so you can kind of fix perfections a lot more easily. And look how much faster I can do it when I'm not holding my hoop in my hand. Not saying you have to get a hoop stand, but just saying helps when you're doing two-handed stitches. Okay, and then I'll start filling in the center. We'll start with 2 and then we'll see how it looks. Okay, So you can kind of look at it, and I feel like it needs another one right here. So you kind of just have to like come up in between your knots. I mean, there's fabric there. There's like space there. So just be careful you're not snagging the knots around it, but you can just squish this. Let me move that tail. You can just squish this in there. And then if you need to like move them around a little bit. That one kind of has a funny tail. So cute! Yeah? Do we like it? Okay, so let's do these little yellow ones, and then we'll fill in some greenery if you don't want your cornucopia touching your yellow flowers. And I like these two are so much similar in color. Like you just get like kind of just like little pops of that light brown, which I think is very nice. Okay, so these little red flowers, I'm just gonna do like one giant French knot. So I'm gonna do 6 strands. Oh, sorry, I keep hitting that. And see if I can just get one single French knot for that center. So I've got my 3 strands of my needle. I'm gonna double it over. Okay. So I'm gonna come up kind of on the side, and then when I go down, I'll go down more in the middle. So I'm gonna wrap this 3 times. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be perfect. Perfect size. One, two, three. Oh, those are cute. Let me zoom you out. That's so cute. I like them. Okay, let me tie this off, and then let's talk about filling in some space. Now, if you like it the way it is, don't fill it in more. You don't have to do any more if you don't want to. I mean, if you haven't finished your cornucopia like I haven't, then, you know, finish filling that in. But if you want to do like some more greenery in there, because your cornucopia really should come like down into here, but I don't want to. So I'm just gonna fill it in with some greenery. So I'm gonna get the lighter green, which is the 904. I don't want it to be like satin stitched. I don't want it to be completely filled. So I'm gonna use 3 strands and just kind of come in with some random straight stitches. Kind of like grass would be, or something like that. Just like some sprigs, different angles, create just like a little bit of fun texture. Okay, so I'm gonna start over here, and I'm just gonna kind of at random just fill in some green. Some of them I'm gonna come up on my cornucopia, and then I'm just tucking them under that stitch so that they're connected. You could do more than I'm doing, you could do less than what I'm gonna do, but just to kind of fill it in a little bit. kind of to connect with that cornucopia. Since I'm not going to do more brown. Let's see if I like this stitch. I might not. No, I don't think I'm going to like that. I think that's too much crossover. Maybe one more. While you're stitching, like, take a break for a second, stop and look, make sure you're not doing more than what you want. Like, take in the whole thing instead of just this one little section. Like, look at it as a whole and then decide if you actually need more. Okay, I think I'm gonna do a couple down here too. Yeah. I'm gonna come over and pretend like this stem kind of goes down here more. I'm gonna do a couple, I'm gonna do a detached chain stitch here. As if it's a leaf like from this orange flower stem. You could come in and do like some French knots if you wanted. I think I'm gonna leave that. This over here. She's cute. Okay. I don't know why it like cannot zoom at that. Like gets fuzzy. All right. Oh my gosh, it is so blurry. Sorry, I don't know how to fix it. Okay, that is it for me. Oh shoot, we didn't do the stem. Okay, I have to finish the cornucopia around there. I'm trying to decide. I have to go live next week to show you how to finish the back. I think I'll just do one more like mini live before I finish the back. I'll do one more like mini live to do the stem of the pumpkin. I totally spaced it. I'm sorry. That's why I was supposed to finish the cornucopia and I didn't do it. Okay, so I'll work on this right now so we can do our stem. I think I'll double check my schedule, but probably Monday. I'll post it in stories so you'll know, but one more little mini, it'll be like 5-10 minutes. It won't be long. So, all right, enjoy your weekend, stitch your girl, let me know how it goes, message me with any questions, and have a great weekend. I will see you back next week. Bye.